Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today, I have with me Alex Svinov. Now, Alex is CEO and co-founder of Insquad, which is a platform to build remote development teams. And as the world basically circulates around technology these days, it's very, very important to get a great development team. And remote now, as we know, with the pandemic, has produced changed the way we work. He believes that the future of work is in remote teams, and this notion will radically change the world as it will bring opportunity and talent closer to each other. Alex launched Insquad 1 year ago because he faced challenges hiring senior tech talents for his previous startup. He tried staffing services, but they were expensive and didn't give him a lot of value to him as a startup. So decided to solve the problem and help the startup community, as well as offer great opportunities of talents in underprivileged countries. Now, Insquad holds an 80% plus interview to hire rate and worked with over 300 tech startups. Alex is a serial entrepreneur. He's created several successful startups in fintech, outsourcing, HR tech, and food service, and we'll maybe touch on a few of those. Alex met with Bill Clinton and Queen Elizabeth in Moscow's high school. Outside of work, he's a father of three. He loves and plays tennis and regularly participates in amateur tournaments. Welcome to the show, Alex. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. Pleased to be here.
So, Alex, this is what's great about remote. With today's tech, you and I can have a conversation, and you're in Serbia and I'm in Sydney. But what inspired, let's get back to the start. Originally, you're from Russia and you have been in the startup community for quite a long time. What inspired you to get involved in startups as an entrepreneur? What was the inspiration?
Yeah, I think first part of my career I spent in finance. Although I graduated from IT, I spent it in finance because I felt that I'm more interested in numbers than in doing the code. And maybe 10, 12 years down the road, I kind of knew it all. Like I didn't feel, I made good money. I was working in investment banking. I was doing these big deals, and it was like a lot of hype. But I felt that I'm the only people I'm actually helping I'm helping rich people to get richer, right?
Okay.
And it didn't feel a lot kind of rewarding, and it didn't feel a lot that I'm helping the world to improve. And I just at one point felt that I want to do something real. So I went out, I did MBA at that point, and I went out and found a partner, and I started my first startup. That's basically how it started.
So it really wasn't about the money. It was more about fulfillment. Is that really what it was?
It's absolutely, that is absolutely true. I mean, I would discourage everybody who thinks that doing startups is first and foremost about money from doing startups, or from thinking this way, just because you obviously we all enjoy making money, right? Don't get me wrong, but money comes after, right? First you have to do something that really adds value, that really brings great product, and you have to be prepared for the world to not notice you for a long time, and to go through a lot of struggling, because that's there are just so many startups out there. There are so many things that people try to do and to invent, and if you are only focused on money, then you're gonna get tossed quite fast.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's you got to come from with the right motivation, and I think to add value, to solve problems, and do something that is particularly, I think, suited to your own interests and skills and experience is very, very important. And you got to be able to play the long game. So
and I also think one important point about money is that I actually like that you touched on that, is that even if you make something that doesn't make a lot of money, but even if it doesn't make any money, but it gives, for example, you've developed some service that gives gives something to customers, but you didn't find the way to monetize it, you still learn a lot about how to build a startup, how to talk to your clients, how to build a team, a lot of things, a lot of skills that you need down the road. You need them every day if you want to be in a startup.
Yeah. So that, and the other thing I'm curious about, did you start, have you started businesses or startups as a side hustle? In other words, you kept your day job or you had another job? Did that ever happen? Or did you just leap into, you said, had enough savings to do it and just leapt in?
Well, it kind of, the first one, I started as I had a job, and I started, it's like a side hustle, but I think a month or 2 months down the road, I just figure out that I cannot, combine these two because, again, to do something great, and these days you really need to deliver something new, something great, something really changing the experience, or some new product, right? You need to really dive deep, and in my case it was just impossible, to spend daytime at one job and at night trying to do something else. So in 2 months time, I quit my day job, and I was actually lucky because our startup started making some money quite soon, and we were able to raise capital.
So what was your first startup and where did that idea come for that?
Well, it was very simple. I mean, at least today it seems obvious, right? We were doing outsourced software development, but at that time it was like, something that I didn't know a thing about.
Right.
I got lucky because I had a partner who knew something about outsourced software development, and I was there doing more finance, and he was doing more operations. So it kind of clicked together.
Right. So was it, so you saw there was a problem or a gap that needed to be filled in the market? Is that really what it was about? You're going, this is, uh, need to fill this?
Well, I've seen that the world is going more and more towards this concept of remote work, and that when you have a lot of demand for software engineering services in developed countries, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, US, Australia, at the same time you have a lot of great talents elsewhere, and it kind of made perfect sense, right? You build teams in Eastern Europe, and you export the services to United States or to Western Europe, and make good profit margins on that.
Yeah. So and that's raised another question in terms of remote work, and also raises the question of timing, because quite often timing can be the most important thing to get right when it comes to doing a startup or launching one. So now, in terms of timing, the pandemic has basically accelerated remote work, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely, very much so. I mean, like I think everybody who is in IT and startups has seen a dramatic increase in capabilities and availabilities of remote staff, and a lot of people start accept the fact that remote work is now here for the good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so I think work and business has changed forever since 2020, when the pandemic raised its head and we all had to work from home. And I think people realised that you can actually trust your employees to get work done.
Yeah, and this is, I like this subject that you brought, because I was the guy who was like, no, I want these developers in my office, even though I'm providing staffing outsourcing services. I still want to see all my teams in office, because it's it kind of felt like, okay, all these people are here now, I know that they are working. And when the pandemic had come, there was no option. Yeah, we had to get everybody remote, and a surprising thing has happened. A lot of the developers that I had in my teams, they actually their performance has improved. And
Right.
when we studied it, with the reasons why it did improve, one of the main reasons was because they did not get distracted and they were focused very much on what they were doing. So it kind of splits. I mean, if you want your developers to be sitting in your office just to make sure that they are working, most likely your developers are not very enthusiastic about what they're doing, because if they are enthusiastic, they will work 24/7. They don't need to be in the office. That's the fact.
So there's, out of that then, is if they're self-motivated, of course you want self-motivated staff. On the other hand, you really do need to make sure that you feel like you're part of a team. So how do you manage that as an entrepreneur, as a leader? How do you make sure that you still feel that they're a team? Do you have a routine each week, each month that you use to try and team meetings? What's your routine and tools and tactics to keep the team, make sure you feel that they're part of a team?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think everybody has their own tips and tricks. What we're doing in our teams, first of all, we encourage the team to have a short coffee break every day, and speak about something totally irrelevant. Yep. But that we don't do it on a global scheme, because we have 300 developers right now, right? But every team, when there are 5 or 10 developers and testers and so on, we encourage them to do their coffee breaks. Then we do every week, we do have a meeting when everybody is welcome to come and say whatever they want to talk about, but not work, right? There is one limit. Don't talk about work. Typically we talk about something new that happened this week, some book I read, or maybe a film I saw, or I did something great, or I took a bicycle ride, or whatever. But it makes people feel that they are people. They are not just colleagues who need to do this job, right? They have actual lives. And of course we have every now and then we have offline meetings. It's getting tough though, because we're truly international company these days, so we cannot do it like for everybody. But we try to do when we have few teammates in one area, we bring them together.
Right.
So it's a combination essentially. Yep. I think it's important, to be honest, people get together in our teams because they want to do some great product or do something, right? So that's their main motivation. So that having some topics to discuss outside of work is something that kind of makes their job easier, because they feel that more comfortable talking to each other. They are more open, more trustworthy to each other. So they typically find the way how to talk it through if you give them this opportunity.
Yeah, and I think people obviously gravitate to people they like. So it's you can't force people to be social. In other words, you got to let them find their own place and space to actually hang with people they want to hang with. Now, the thing that I'm always curious about, and a lot of people ask this question. Okay, so you've got your idea. Okay, for Insquad, you see that there is a real need for startups to hire great developers, and you're going, okay, so this is a problem that needs to be solved because you had a problem with the previous company you're working for. Next, you got the idea. Okay, so how complicated was your business plan? And the next question after that is, how did you go about raising money? So number one, tell me a little bit about how complicated or simple was your business plan?
Well, I'm a big fan of bootstrapping, so my business plan was very, very easy. I first find at least one client, and I'm not trying to make all the money in the world and trying to sell at super high margins. I want to, just somebody who is genuinely interested in my product.
Yep.
And then I arrange with them that, okay, you are our first client. We're not gonna make any money on you, but we want information, right? And that's where I would do the market survey, and that is what saves me a lot of time on business plans. Now, of course, there are types of businesses when you need to invest quite a substantial amount of money up front, so you need to build a detailed business plan. But my business plans were always a small Excel spreadsheet that I could do in like a couple of hours and then go and try.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, I think one of the things that I prefer to do the most is go out and try, because you are going to get way more information, way more insights. And also the important thing that at least in my experience, is that every time I try to start something new, my mind starts to do some pictures. Okay, maybe and this is how it's done, and this is how this market works. And the reality is that my mind comes up with these ideas of having no initial information. It's just something because I saw somebody there, or I saw a movie about somebody doing this, and it's totally irrelevant to the actual market. So because I want my mind to stop playing tricks on me, I just go ahead and say, I try, and then I think about it.
That's fascinating, and I totally agree with you. You learn by doing. And I love the quote by Mike Tyson. He said, "Everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face."
Oh yeah.
So
that's a strong one.
Yeah, and guess what? In business, you're going to get hit in the face, and
many times.
So, and you got hit in the face earlier this year. Tell us about that. That was a real challenge. So something happened in the world earlier this year, and I think people can guess what that is. And you were based in Russia.
Yeah.
So what happened, and what did you do?
Yeah, we started maybe mid last year. So by early this year, we already had some clients, and we already had because we're starting in Russia, we were focused more on the Russian market and Russian developers, and we had quite a few of them in our database. And then, of course, the political situation has changed, and I as a CEO and co-founder had probably the hardest hit in my face ever, because this is something that I could never take into account. And I mean, if I would have thought about such opportunity, I probably wouldn't have started in the first place, just because this is something that you don't think about. And then I had a challenge because most of the clients, they could not work with the developers located physically in Russia any longer. And so we've in the course of 48 hours, we had to evacuate our development team and marketing teams. And I was very nervous, and I was very much concerned that I would have people inside my team discussing and kind of reflecting on what's going on, instead of focusing on the job. Because when things like that happen, and it's somewhere very close to you, right? It's not remote, it's right in your backyard. You feel a lot of pain. No, of course you're not we're not the hardest hit. We're not in Ukraine, but we still felt a lot of pain. And I was concerned that this is gonna have a heavy effect on the team. But everybody was like, hey, we really want to focus as much as possible on work. We don't want to get into the politics. We don't want to get we don't want to get drafted. We don't want to kill anybody, so we want to just go away and do our thing.
Mm-hmm.
and we managed to move pretty much entire team in the course of 48 hours. And maybe in 6 days, we entered new markets. We started recruiting developers from India, from Nigeria, and from Latin America. And so, 6 months down the road, we're feeling much better now, and we are very, very much international. So I tend to find the good things in everything what happens. Of course, there's nothing good about the war that's gone on, but the good thing for Insquad in particular is that we learned how to be international in the course of 1 week. I had a plan to do it in the course of 2 years. We did it in 1 week.
So you've moved, and it sounds like you continue to grow. So you have two sides to your business that you need to, one, resource, in other words, find developers, and then you need to sell those skills and those developers to startups. So let's have, I'm curious about, how do you source good developers? That I'm curious about that first, and then we'll talk more about how you find customers.
Well, the reality is that there is no way to source only good developers. The way we did it is we've looked at the whole process of hiring and identified the parts that are taking a lot of time and are taking especially a lot of time of the tech people, because the problem with hiring in tech is all about identifying the talents. Takes a lot of time of other team talents on the team, right? So your entire development team ends up spending time interviewing and checking the tasks and asking questions instead of writing code. And developers don't really like to interview; they like to write code. I mean, good developers like to do that. So that's also kind of demotivating them. And so what we've done is we've built a vetting machine where we've used some artificial intelligence algorithms, and that we basically ask every developer that comes onto our platform to pass that vetting on the skills that he or she claims to be proficient in. And that way we can separate the strong developers from the ones that are not that strong yet. And our vetting typically, lets in 1 or 2% of the flock. So it does a good job of saving, a lot of time for our technical recruiters to see all the talents.
That's interesting. So you use software to do the vetting for you, or part of the vetting for you, or the heavy lifting. So did you write that in-house, or was it a tool that you adapted and found and adapted?
Oh no, we had to do it in-house. It's basically the core of our business is this platform that actually, it's not only the vetting part, it's also a lot of it is motivational part, because when you get somebody onto a platform, especially great developers these days, even today, with the market softening, still, great developers will always find a job. So they are kind of reluctant to, take all the tests that are out there. One of the things that we've encountered and that we had to, learn how to work with is to motivate the developers to go through the tests and pass them and get their profile fixed on our platform. So that's a big part of what we've been doing for the last year and a half.
So do you use paid advertising to reach out to developers, or is it organic as well?
Paid advertising is, we tried that. It did work, but it didn't work very well. Because these days, paid is very, very easy, right? So anybody can do that. And and then you start to compete with the budgets, and we as a startup, we cannot compete with the big guys who can invest millions into advertising. So what we're focused on is content, is communities, is building our own word out there, and working with some partners who have large networks of developers that are located in some particular area. Because what we found is that if you go to there are separate communities for developers from India, from developers from Ghana, from developers from Argentina, and so on and so forth, and likewise for the developers in any particular tech stack, for C#, for Java. This would be all different communities. So they are opinion leaders there. So we did it the smart way, and then that's when it clicked.
Right. So basically, one of your top ways to find good developers is to basically participate in different software development communities all around the world. Is that correct?
Well, that's one thing. We do also have a bunch of events for developers that when we get them together, we have some interesting task for them to solve. So that's the value we bring to developers is we make the process interesting to them.
Okay.
So they don't feel that we bought them. They feel that they feel that we make something interesting. We give them a challenge that they want to solve, and that's when you get them onto the platform.
Okay, so is that running events like a hackathon?
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, hackathon is one of those events, but there are some conferences that we sponsor, and then we go out and talk on. So it's not just one event. I think it's a machine. Essentially, what we've built is a machine to generate interest for developers to join our platform.
And the other thing you mentioned too is content. So do you mean that you regularly publish content on your site? How do you sounds like you're doing some content marketing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we do obviously have blogs. We do have content on our blog. We do have some content on Medium. We do have Twitter. So I cannot say that there was a single channel that has done it all, right? And when we first started, we thought the customer journey will be like, I've seen your text in Twitter, and then I got onto your platform, I passed the test, and here I am. It doesn't work like that.
No.
I've seen your text in Twitter, then I heard about you somewhere else, then I read something, then I came to your event, and then when you had like 5 to 10 touches, then you kind of have I remember something about you guys, because there's just so much content out there. Then you have to stand out. You have to you have people to see 1 or 2 or 3 or more pieces of text about you guys before they actually commit any time on your platform.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of the time the sales funnel is seen as this lovely linear journey. It's not a linear journey. It's more like a matrix. And it's so you got to learn to go into the matrix and produce a lot of content that comes from all sorts of places. But content does create credibility and trust. So the Edelman Trust Barometer, I remember reading quite a long time ago, saw that one of the things it measured was if people see you once or twice, your trust level is like below 5%. If they see you 5 or 6 times, in other words, different pieces of content, a tweet, a blog post, maybe an ad, potentially. Once they see you 5 or 6 times, the trust level goes to like 55, 60%. And the other thing too is the journey of someone contacting you, because we've got so much content online these days, is that 60 to 70% of the research has been done before anyone even sends you an email or contacts you directly. In other words, you could be they're checking you out quietly. And
absolutely.
And that's why content becomes very, very powerful. And that's what I discovered when I started the blog in 2009, was just relentlessly created content. And then over time, when you play the long game, then the magic happens, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. That's exactly what we felt like. 12 months down the road. At first, it kind of felt, we're working. There's no result. We can't, because you cannot see it, right? You cannot until you touch them 5 or 6 times. You see nothing, and you're like, well, maybe we're doing something wrong. We should change our content manager, or we should change, or the way we distribute. But then, it started paying off after, or maybe after 12 months, we've seen a dramatic spike in interest. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that raises another interesting thing about trust. How important, so sounds like you spent a lot of time, especially with your first client, as you mentioned, you're saying, look, we're going to do this. We're not going to charge you much. In fact, we break even. What I want from you is information. That's what you mentioned right off the bat. On top of that, then, is how important then is testimonials from your clients to you as a business?
Well, I think there is nothing better in our business. We're in a business to business world, and there is nothing better in our world if somebody is recommending your business. So it is so much cheaper to win a client if somebody is recommending you than to do all the marketing tricks. And that's, I guess, it puts a very right motivation for us. Don't screw your clients, because each client you have will refer 2 or 3 clients, year or 2 years down the road, and you will pay nothing for them. And so I think it's very important.
Yeah, and that for me was quite an very interesting and important point you made about the fact is your first client or few clients, it's much more about gaining information than about making money, and that's, I think, worth gold. Now that raises the other question I asked a few minutes ago as a second part of, because you've got this two-sided marketplace. You've got the developers, and then you've got the companies. So how do you market to get new clients that want those developers? What's your most important strategies for you and the team and your marketing team?
Well, over the course of the last 18 months, we've tried a lot. We're like I said, we try more. Probably, I think the single most important factor for the startups to succeed is how fast can it test hypotheses. And out of all outbound and inbound channels, what we found is that content is actually doing the best job. Again, it's the same with the developers, right? If you build trust with the content that you create, in the minds of your potential clients, if there is something that they find interesting, and if it resonates, they will come, right? If the product you are selling is something as competitive as a software developer, I mean that we're not the only guys out there, right? We're not. This is not like a rocket science what we've created. So it's very important to be consistent, and it's very important to deliver value in the content that you produce. And this has worked way better than any outreach strategies, because I'd say maybe 90% of all the clients that came from inbound. Not so they knew something about us, and that's why they were ready to to go out and talk to us.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and only 10% we've outreach somebody. So yeah, that's how it works, at least in our world.
Well, I think it works in a lot of B2B. You've got to build trust through content. You've got to showcase your credibility through content. So what type of content do you create that helps get that inbound inquiry?
Yeah, well, we do a lot. Two examples that I think are probably most relevant and that work the best. One is case studies.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we actually, talk to one of our clients and, ask them to elaborate a little bit how it felt on their side. And it's very important not to make it, a marketing case study, because
Mm.
there's a fine line, but
Mm.
you will feel it. There is no, there is no doubt you will feel it if you see that, it's like, it has been written by a marketing person, and it wasn't like a testimonial, because it doesn't give any depth. It tries more to sell than to give you some information, and that's when you stop responding to this kind of information. That's one thing. And another thing is that when we do have some very strong talents on our team, and we actually ask them if they do have something interesting about technology they're talking about, they are working on. Developers actually, even though they don't really like to talk, they like to write. And they don't only like to write the code, but they can also write a lot about the code, right? And about the technologies, about the evolution of any particular technology. We had this developer who was writing for us about the front end technologies, how first was Angular, now it's React, and what's going to be the next step, where it's all going. This is actually a very fruitful type of content, because our customers are essentially the technology guys, the CTOs, VPs of engineering, that type of positions, and they are very deep into the technologies that they are working on, and they are always interested to learn something new. Every developer, every great developer I've ever met is always interested to learn something new, and is always interested to talk about the technologies.
And that raises another question then about, for me, is that a lot of companies, especially knowledge industries, are very much about technology and tools. In other words, and quite often to grow as a company, is that there's two arm races. In other words, battles to be fought. Number one is a battle for market share. The other one is a battle for technology. In other words, is your technology better than the other companies? So there's this ongoing, and this is not a destination, this is a journey all the time of continuing to develop software internally in a company. And I think a lot of more traditional companies haven't realized how important it is to go down that, or to invest in technology. So where's the future of software development going? You've mentioned things like AI. What are some of the big trends in software development that you think are emerging over the next 10 years?
Well, I'm not probably the best person to answer these questions. I'll give you my my take. I think that AI we're seeing only early days of AI. I mean, what the AI can do is it truly revolutionary. I think it's one of those technologies, comparable to the what internet has done to our lives in the past 20 years. We'll see AI doing it going forward, maybe in the next 20 years. That's one thing. I'm a bit more pessimistic on the blockchain. I don't know, maybe I'm not fully appreciating that technology, but I think there's too much hype about it, and it still is very early, and it kind of has to find its way through. And I think a lot more we'll see in the metaverse, and the interfaces, and the way we actually consume information. That technology is I think is gonna definitely take off, and it's gonna solve a lot of existing problems. So basically, these two bets that I would make. We'll check it out a couple of years down the road, but I think AI and metaverse.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. It's that topic of the metaverse, and Mark Zuckerberg's almost betting Facebook's future on the metaverse. So is he too early, or has he got the timing right? I'd be interested in your take on this, seeing you brought up the metaverse topic, because that's
yeah. I mean, I think metaverse much broader in a sense that I have 3 kids, and they all, when they were little, I mean, when they were like 5 to 8 years old, they were playing Minecraft. Then they are playing Roblox, and I mean, this is metaverse, right? They spend at least 6 to 8 hours a day in the gadgets, and they not necessarily playing, but also learning. And there is just I think the metaverse is there for them already. So I definitely think that I'm not sure if Facebook will succeed with this, because it's always the question when one company develops a technology, it's always one-sided, and it's much better to do it like an open source type development. But I definitely think that there's still a lot more to come, a lot more to learn. People just spend, if you travel these days in a subway, you see everybody's in their smartphone, right? So even though they're sitting in the subway, they are not there, they're in the metaverse, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the metaverse is already here. It happens to be a smartphone.
Yeah, that's true.
How many people are going to wear headsets? I think, and I saw an open letter from one of the big investors in Facebook who said that they're a little concerned of Mark Zuckerberg's investment in CapEx for development. Facebook, Metaverse, is spending $30 billion a year on software development.
Well, I mean, it's a tough call, because obviously, Mark is the guy who built this company from the ground up, and I mean, obviously, he is a visionary. He may succeed or he may not succeed. The future will tell us. That definitely what he has made with his huge investment, he has actually brought a lot of interest to this particular technology, and this is definitely gonna work its way to become one of the mainstreams, at least in my view.
I think the term you used when we started talking about this topic, the metaverse, and that came up, was how we consume information has changed. And if you think about it, we now have information everywhere, which the smartphone did. In other words, social media actually emerged before we actually had the democratization of smartphones. So the smartphone was this perfect, and social media is this intersection of how we consume information that created the perfect storm that opened up the whole social media verse, which is heading maybe towards a metaverse. But I think how we consume information is a big topic, and Elon Musk has a different idea how we can do that with a brain implant. So, maybe he's got the picture better than Mark has. We're going to find out, I think, over time. So,
yeah, it's a great rivalry, I think, because Elon is definitely the guy who is trying every crazy thing that is out there. He ought to try, right? I mean, every now and then he does hit a home run, but he's trying a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, and I suppose he's got the money to do it. So, but we'll be interested to see what happens with Twitter as well, seeing he's just sacked 3,500 Twitter employees.
Yeah, I mean, we're heavily dependent on Twitter, in terms of building our loyal base of developers, and also we talk a lot of customers on Twitter. So I'm just hoping he's not gonna ruin whatever there is.
Yeah.
But these days you don't know.
Well, it's Twitter for me was a really big deal and helped me grow my brand early on, and so we've ended up with nearly 600,000 Twitter followers. But that was important for me to grow the blog and the traffic and attention. But as with anything, and this is the other thing that I battle with all the time, and I think everyone in marketing battles with, is the battle of the algorithms. In other words, how much visibility are you going to get to your content as the algorithms are tweaked to make money for the platforms? So what do you think about algorithms and the ongoing challenge as a marketer and as a business? And it extends into software as well. Well, it is software.
Yeah, absolutely. It is software. And I mean, we really depend on them because obviously we work with content. So we work on LinkedIn, we work on Twitter. We need to understand the way they work. But I think as long as algorithms are out there to make this any particular platform more relevant to you, give you the most relevant information, I think they're good, right? I actually like Twitter algorithms a lot because they allow you, even when you don't have a lot of subscribers, even if you're somebody new, but you can write well, you can express yourself, and you got something to talk about, you can easily advance there. So it's I think it's a very democratic way to communicate. And it's very fast. I mean, you can gain a lot of traction there in a matter of months, not years.
And the other thing that's fascinating too is watching TikTok, the rise of TikTok, which is not so much follower centric with its algorithm, but more content centric. In other words, you can grow a following out of content rather than have to have followers to get content out. And also that raises another interesting question too. And I haven't explored marketing with TikTok very much, but I think we're going to go down that route shortly. The other thing that's interesting is Apple throwing a bomb in the middle of marketers because of privacy. And so that's affected Facebook because it relies upon information about consumers and companies to be able to do effective marketing and advertising targeting. And Apple said, no, you're not going to actually get access to it. How's that impacting you, and what are your thoughts on privacy?
Well, I think, I mean, this war is not over.
No.
And obviously, I mean, yeah, we can see that the market has punished Facebook, and obviously they are the innovations that Apple made last year, they are already seen in the top line and the bottom line of Facebook. But I think the fight of the future is all about information, is all about what about whom you are trying to sell anything to. And I don't really see, I mean, obviously, I'm as a consumer, I enjoy it a lot that I have an option to click, please don't record information about me. However, I think that as a business, it's definitely going to be going the route of collecting more and more data, more and more information. I mean, that's basically when you're online, the only differentiator is how much information do you know about your customer. And I cannot say that it's a bad. I mean, obviously there is a question of that now I know more information about the customer that the customer knows about himself and that he was ever willing to give out. I can definitely see a point there. But on the other side, if this information is used to give me better offers that are more relevant to me, that that the algorithms know that I'm male and I'm in my 40s, so I probably need my health insurance, and I have kids, so I probably don't need to don't need anything related to 20-year-old guys, and then it just doesn't waste my time, right? So it makes the offer more relevant to me. I see that there is a good argument for actually allowing data companies collect some of that data. Only maybe that would be a good niche to explore, is to make actual services or products that would allow me as a consumer to delete whatever information I don't want them to collect, but to leave everything rest, right? Because so far what Apple has done is completely allowed to completely eliminate any data tracking algorithms. But what if I want to track my presence on any particular site and don't want to track on some other site, whatever it would be, right? That I think would be probably a good compromise.
Yeah, information is a two-edged sword.
Oh, absolutely.
And how we both collect it and then how we consume it are big questions. So I'm aware of your time, and it's late in Serbia, and just a couple of quick questions to finish up. So as an entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned that you'd like to share with fellow entrepreneurs and people that maybe are thinking of starting one or starting a side hustle? What are some of the biggest tips you could offer to our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, I would definitely start with go out and try. Don't think that you can't do it. Don't let your mind paint all the different pictures of how you will not succeed. You may not succeed in a sense that you may not build, maybe it will end up that you don't build whatever you think you want to build. However, you will gain a lot of experience, you will gain a lot of new contacts, and you will be much better positioned to do it, next thing in your life. So stop hesitating and try to go out and do it. That's one thing. Another thing is beware of whom you choose as your co-founders. Because if you want to build something big, you cannot do it all yourself. There are lots of solopreneurs out there, and this phenomena these days. But I don't really believe that you can build a great business doing it by yourself. I mean, you need people to validate your ideas. You need people to help you build a great product. So try to find yourself a great co-founder. It's a very very important thing. And don't a lot of times I see people try to find an idea and then find a team, but I actually think it's quite the opposite, because if you've got a great team, if you've got great partners to rely on, you will find your great idea. The great ideas, idea is not worth much. Execution is hard.
Exactly.
A lot of great things have fallen apart just because there was not enough execution. But you will never hear about that, from people. You will always hear, hey, this was a bad idea, or for something didn't work out, but we don't know what. But in reality, people have a lot in their control when they are motivated, and when they are smart, and when they're sharp, and when they're energetic. So it's finding a great co-founder or partners is very important. And the second and the third thing, just to finish, is that before you try to scale, try to sell. That's also a thing that I love to do. If you have a great idea, okay, don't hire anybody. go out and try to sell it to somebody. If there is nobody who is going to buy your product, most likely you don't need to scale it, right? You first need to find the product market fit. And this is another thing that people overlook a lot of times. I mean, it sounds very easy, but then when you start building, a lot of time you get caught up in the processes, and there are so many people, and there's a lot of things going on that you don't really keep your eye on trying to sell this product to your customer. And that's the first thing you should do. Don't take on the costs, take on the revenues.
That's very, very, very good advice. And that, along with that, is, I think, for me, and I'll be interested in your thought just to wrap it up, is not overcomplicating, create a minimal viable product. And I think as entrepreneurs, we can add too many ideas to the mix, but we've got to execute the main thing well, don't we? So what's your thought on a minimal viable product and how important it's been to you over your entrepreneurial experience?
Well, I actually, I think the sales should go first. So even I tried to do the sale before I have the product. Right. At least that I would hear the feedback, right? Am I selling crap, or am I selling something that people really need?
Yeah.
Because and then I can spend on building an MVP. Obviously, I as a startup founder, I'm always about the MVP and how we can deliver something faster, maybe smaller but faster. That's all about. It's not even the concept of MVP. I think in a startup, I think it's even in a big company. I mean, so far right now we're an established company, and we still every new feature that we make, we still try to first do a small part of it, roll it out, and see how it goes. Because a lot of times we think that people will want to use this or that feature, but they really don't. And a lot of times they will even tell you, "Oh wow, that's great! I really need this, this feature," but then they don't use it. So it's creating a great application these days is more and more try and see approach, because you cannot predict whether this feature that you are building is ever going to be used, even though it may seem as great as genius.
Yep. In essence, you've summed up what you would recommend to everyone: is learn by doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's all what startups about.
Yeah, ideas are cheap. It's the execution and the doing to find out whether you've produced something that the world wants.
100%.
So, Alex, thank you very much for your time. I know it's late at night in Eastern Europe, and congratulations on starting a company and surviving even during some tough challenges like you had earlier this year. Hats off to you. I learned so much by listening to some very, very clever entrepreneurs all around the world, and I feel grateful to have had the time to share it with you, and thank you for your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff, for having me. It's great. It's great to be able to talk to guys like you. I enjoy it a lot.
Great. Thank you very much.